When people talk about alien encounters, they picture one thing: gray skin, large black eyes, small body, the classic image. But there is a second category of reported beings that appears far less often in popular culture, and far more often in the most credible, most disturbing, and most consistent witness testimony on record. Tall, angular, elongated limbs, triangular head, eyes that wrap around the skull like compound lenses, a body that moves with mechanical, insectoid precision. Witnesses describe them as the most intelligent beings they have ever encountered. Multiple abductees report that the gray beings, the ones everyone recognizes, appear to defer to them, to wait for instructions, to step back when they enter the room. John Mack, the Harvard psychiatrist who spent years studying abduction cases and paid for it professionally, specifically identified the mantis type as appearing in the most psychologically impactful encounters he documented. Not the most frightening, the most significant. And here is what nobody is connecting. The Hopi people of the American Southwest have preserved an oral tradition for thousands of years describing beings they call the ant people, insectoid beings who lived underground and saved humanity twice from global catastrophe. Ancient Egypt built one of its most enduring religious symbols around an insect, the scarab, as the embodiment of creation, transformation, and the movement of the sun itself. Mesopotamian cylinder seals show elongated, angular figures alongside the Anunnaki in ceremonial contexts that archaeologists have never fully explained. And in October 1973, 2 men fishing on the Pascagoula River in Mississippi were taken aboard a craft by beings that matched no known gray description: robotic, insectoid, with crab-like appendages, and a physiology that witnesses described as unlike anything in human experience. The same beings, thousands of years apart, every continent, every tradition. Here is the full record. The Hopi are one of the oldest continuously inhabited cultures in North America. Their oral traditions, preserved with extraordinary fidelity across generations of tribal historians, describe a cosmology divided into world ages. Each world age ends in catastrophe. Each time, a remnant of humanity survives. The first world was destroyed by fire, volcanic eruption, asteroid impact, or coronal mass ejection. The Hopi texts don't specify the mechanism, only the result. The surface became uninhabitable. The second world was destroyed by ice. The texts describe the Earth spinning off its axis, a pole shift, triggering glaciation across the inhabited world. In both catastrophes, the same beings appeared: the ant people. In Hopi, the Anu Sinom. They emerged from underground. They found the virtuous members of the Hopi ancestral population, those who had maintained what the tradition calls the thread of right living, and led them down into the earth, into a network of underground chambers where the ant people lived. The Hopi ancestors survived both apocalypses underground, sheltered, fed, and educated by the ant people during the intervals between world ages. And the descriptions in the oral tradition are specific. The ant people were industrious. They lived in organized, structured communities. They communicated without speech, through what the tradition describes as something closer to direct transmission of thought. They had slender waists, large eyes, and elongated heads. The Hopi word for ant, Anu, is also intriguingly the name of the chief Sumerian sky god. Whether that is coincidence or convergence is a question that has never been satisfactorily answered. Ancient Egypt was not subtle about its relationship with the insect world. Khepri, one of the forms of the solar deity Ra, was depicted as a scarab beetle. Not inspired by a scarab, not symbolized by a scarab, was a scarab-headed being rolling the sun across the sky, governing transformation, creation, and renewal. The scarab was not a minor symbol. It was placed in the innermost chambers of tombs, pressed against the chest of the mummy directly over the heart, as the most important protective amulet in Egyptian funerary tradition. The heart scarab was the last line of defense between the soul and annihilation. In the Egyptian understanding, the scarab embodied the principle of self-generation, creation from nothing. The beetle appeared to emerge spontaneously from dung, from decay, from the earth itself. It represented a being that came from below and moved the most important thing in the sky, an insectoid deity. Underground origin, controller of celestial mechanics. In Mesopotamia, cylinder seals from the Akkadian and Sumerian periods show figures alongside the known Anunnaki depictions that archaeologists classify as ritual or decorative, but that bear specific morphological characteristics. Elongated bodies, angular proportions, features that don't map cleanly onto the humanoid divine figures in the same images. The Apkallu, the 7 sages we discussed in the Sumerian Kings episode, are depicted in their earliest representations as fish Apkallu, half human and half fish. But a secondary class of Apkallu, the Ugalu, are depicted with non-human angular features and are specifically associated with protection from below. Ancient insectoid beings encoded into the oldest religious traditions on Earth, and modern witnesses describing the same beings in classified contexts. Subscribe. Things that shouldn't exist goes this deep every single week. October 11, 1973. Pascagoula River, Mississippi. Charles Hickson, 42, and Calvin Parker, 19, are fishing on the river at dusk. They hear a zipping sound. A craft appears, oval, glowing blue-white, hovering above the water. 3 beings emerge. And here is where the Pascagoula case diverges from every standard gray encounter in the literature. The beings are approximately 6 feet tall. Their skin is described as gray and wrinkled, but the texture is compared to elephant skin, not the smooth surface of the classic gray. They have no visible eyes. Instead, a slit or cone-shaped protrusion where eyes should be. Their mouths are slits. Their hands are crab-like, pincer appendages rather than fingers. They do not walk. They float, moving just above the ground with no apparent locomotion. Hickson and Parker are paralyzed, not physically restrained, but unable to move, and brought aboard the craft. What follows is a medical examination described by both men as clinical, methodical, and utterly impersonal. The beings show no emotion, no curiosity, no communication. They are returned to the riverbank. The craft disappears. Here is what makes Pascagoula different from almost every other case in the literature. Hickson and Parker went immediately to the local sheriff's department. The sheriff, skeptical, left them alone in a room with a hidden recording device, expecting them to relax and reveal a hoax. The recording captured 2 terrified men, one weeping, both praying, with no awareness they were being recorded. Hickson says on the tape, "I've never been so scared in my life." The U.S. Navy investigated. The case was never officially explained. Calvin Parker, who stayed largely silent for decades, published a book in 2018, confirming every detail of the original account. His testimony has never changed in 50 years. The beings he and Hickson described do not match gray morphology. They match insectoid morphology. Specifically, the claw-like appendages, the hovering locomotion, the absence of conventional facial features, match descriptions from abduction cases reported independently across 4 decades. Step back from the specific cases and ask the question that nobody asks. If there are non-human intelligences that have been interacting with humanity across millennia, why insects? Why would beings with a biological architecture so different from mammals be the ones showing up? The answer from evolutionary biology is uncomfortable. Insects are the most successful life form on Earth. By biomass, by species count, by environmental adaptability, nothing comes close. They have existed for 400 million years. They survived the asteroid impact that killed the dinosaurs. They will survive whatever comes next. The insect body plan, exoskeleton, compound sensory apparatus, distributed nervous system, colony intelligence, is extraordinarily efficient. More efficient, in many respects, than the mammalian plan. If intelligence evolved independently elsewhere in the universe, and the math of the Drake equation suggests it has, many times, there is no particular reason to expect it to look like us. The mammalian body plan is one solution to one set of evolutionary pressures on one planet. An insectoid intelligence evolving on a world with different gravity, different atmospheric chemistry, different predation pressures, would look exactly like what witnesses across 5,000 years of human history have been describing. Not a monster, not a demon, a different answer to the same question. The Hopi ant people, underground beings who saved humanity twice, communicated without language, and lived in organized communities beneath the surface of the earth. Khepri, the scarab god of Egypt, placed at the heart of every pharaoh, governing the movement of the sun, embodying self-generation and transformation. The Pascagoula beings, crab-clawed, hovering, clinically precise, documented by 2 men whose testimony has never changed in 50 years, captured on hidden recording in a state of genuine terror. The mantis beings, tall, ancient, telepathic, and consistently described as the intelligence in charge of whatever hierarchy of non-human entities has been interacting with this planet. And a classified disclosure process that is slowly, reluctantly, under congressional pressure, beginning to acknowledge that non-human biologics exist, that craft have been retrieved, that the programs managing this information have operated outside democratic oversight for decades. The beings that every ancient culture encoded into their most sacred traditions, the ones the modern witness community keeps encountering, are still showing up. The question isn't whether they're real. The question is what they want. Drop a comment. Does the ancient record change how you read the modern testimony? Because the consistency across thousands of years is either the greatest coincidence in human history or the greatest cover-up.
About him. We know about the Mantis Man. Tell us. All right, he was here.